Welcome back. This is your host, Siris King. This podcast episode, this is YouTube. See, I'm so used to podcasts and sometimes I forget. But in this YouTube episode, I'm going to talk about why the one fundamental question that many spiritual systems don't ask or don't direct people to, that eventually end up causing them to hit a wall in their spiritual path. So it's kind of like saying, that's why I have a tower posted as the first picture in this video, because in a sense that when these spiritual systems, which tend to be more modern, approach things from the standpoint of, I like to say, it's not really, I don't even like to say quick fix, because that's easy. It's not so much a quick fix. I think what happens is that most spiritual systems don't address things from the standpoint of, from this fundamental fact. The majority of spirituality is constructed to help you escape the realities of the real world. And that's the bottom line. And they can package themselves as being tools to help you get enlightenment, right? Or packaging themselves as having tools to help you understand the secrets of the universe. But in the end of the day, in order to understand the secrets of the universe, you have to first kind of understand the universe. Like, you have to understand the basics of the universe. So before you could get to the secrets, you got to understand the basics. And this is why most scientists had a problem with spiritual systems, because you can look at the systems, if you have a basic scientific mind, you can look at the systems and tell they're usually created for the purpose of escapism, or the main purpose is to kind of hide in the fundamental reality of nature. And really, as I heard some astronomers say this, and it's true, really, to be honest, to be real, the universe itself is trying to kill you. This is not even to be, preaching doomsday or Armageddon or just being negative. The universe by itself is trying to kill you. So what do I mean? Well, you can look at science fiction, right? And when you look at science fiction, they always tend to have, like, not always, but let's just say science fiction that goes into exploring space, like Star Trek. They would have humans in space, exploring the universe, right? And one thing people don't realize is, in real life, it's extremely hard to explore space. Not even for the fact of how to get to space. Not even forget about the fact that we need some fuel to be able to, I guess, navigate, like help the ship power itself through space. If you're going to make like a 50, 100 year journey, you're going to have a fuel tank that doesn't run out. No, those things are actually easier to solve. Right? The one thing most people don't realize is, the human body. The human body is the biggest problem for space exploration. The body's not really set up for space. The body's majority water. The body has a magnetic field that's dependent on the Earth's magnetic field. The body's evolved to live with gravity. So, in space, there's no gravity like that. So you would have to be able to artificially make gravity. The body, out of the cells, depending on who you ask, but somewhere between 60 to 75% of the cells in the body are not even human. They're not even eukaryotic cells, which means complex cells, right? So they're more bacteria and microbes and dormant viruses, right? So you don't even know, because, for a long time, scientists didn't know that, right? So you look at the human body is actually more non-human than human. So when you're looking at these things, you don't really know how the human body itself will handle being in space for a long time. So that's always been more fantasy than reality for humans. You want to send robots up there, you want to send drones up there, that's a little bit easier. And again, of course, they're going to have the problems like fuel, power. Those are problems that I actually think is more solvable than the biggest problem is how you get the human body to stay healthy in space, right? But regardless, our science fiction still does that. But if you really look at space is a product, and this is another thing I didn't even mention, space, right? A lot of radiation in space, a lot of cosmic rays in space. Our chances of developing cancer will probably go up 10 to 20%. No, I'm sorry. Maybe like 100% in space. I've heard 100%, 200%, lowball 50%. And that's real lowball. That's 50% is like if we get the technology to be able to block out solar radiation and cosmic rays for an extended period of time, which we don't even have right now. Right? We don't even have the technology right now to actually to do that. And best case scenario, some people describe it as being 50%. We may be able to 50% reduce the risk, right? You're talking about 300% chance of developing cancer because there's so much radiation in space. And then when you really look at it, why? Because if you think about it, the Earth is like this big ball, like flying through space, right? And the Earth has a magnetic sphere, right? So the magnetic sphere over the Earth protects us from the cosmic rays of solar radiation. Even from, like, even the normal sunlight, if as perfect as it seems like the sun is a perfect distance from us, if we didn't have a magnetic field over the Earth, the sun would be much stronger and life as we know it would not exist. So really you can look at it as the environment or Mother Nature is protecting you from Father Cosmos or the true forces of the universe, right? So Mother Nature then, she not only protects you, she gives you the environment that you can nourish, that can nourish life. So when you start talking about the spiritual world, we're talking about something that's obviously beyond nature, right? Even though nature could be a doorway to the spiritual world. Something that's beyond the cosmos, even though the cosmos is a guide to the spiritual world. So in a sense, the spiritual world will be nature, the cosmos is something else. So let's just say, for instance, it encompasses the cosmos. And I just described how the cosmos is so deadly to human beings, to animals, to plants. Then that means that there's aspects of the spiritual world the same way. If you look at the physical world as being a copy of the spiritual world. In fact, there may be aspects of the spiritual world that's deadlier than the cosmos. I mean, forget the cosmos, even nature. Let's be realistic. The earth is mostly water. We can't even, the majority of the earth we can't even go to yet. Any marine biologist would tell you, or any scientist who studies the sea would tell you, the sea is actually far more dangerous than the land. There's way more viruses in the sea. You don't think the sea is dangerous? You ever go out in the ocean at nighttime on a boat, on a yacht? Just look. It's scary. You go really far. There's no lights. It's a scary feeling. Even if you love the seas. So the point is, nature itself is not this nice, lovey-dovey environment that modern spiritual systems has depicted. And modern spiritual systems will talk about, matter is bad. It's about transcending matter. It's about this, it's about that. But if the physical world is a copy of the spiritual world, and the cosmos is like almost 100% deadly, and nature is about 65% deadly, right? So then if it's a copy, then you have to go with the intentions of understanding that the spiritual world may not be cookies and cream either. And you had some teachers or masters who tried to convey this and try to translate this without saying it, right? So when you look at Kabbalah, and look at the tree of life, and within the tree of life, what do they say? Well, there's the thing with the tree of life in Kabbalah is it's like a solar, has some aspects of a stellar spirituality, but it's being decoded by the human mind. So even though the system itself is perfect mathematically, it's mathematically perfect. I do have to admit, there's not many spiritual systems on earth I could say that. The human mind is still interpreting Kabbalah. So when you really understand Kabbalah and you understand the concepts of even Da'at, and then you get into even the aspect of the fact that the tree of life is a recreated reality, right? So when you deal with space and time, there was something before that. And when somebody hears this, all of a sudden they say they want to understand what's before space and time. And I just finished for like 10 minutes describing how the universe within space and time will do you in, is dangerous. And the average unbalanced mind will hear this. And if I say there was something placed before space and time, they say, I want to go to that. That's one part of the fundamental problems with humans and trying to teach them spirituality. To be honest, if I want to keep it straight up 100, that's a problem, right? Because what I'm really saying is the tree of life is more of a modern when I say modern creation, it's something even beyond human, but it's more of that is not representation of the true Mother Nature, but that's a representation of the aspect of Mother Nature that's recreated by whichever forces did it. And when they recreated it in such a way where you have the environment that you can study, you can eat, you can grow, you can evolve, right? You can have children. They could, you die, they come in, they pick up where you were, they perfect it, their kids perfect even that. It creates an environment for that. So then it creates the environment that eventually humans learn to ascend. So if you were back in the caveman days and you didn't even have agriculture yet, it was much more harder to ascend. It was much harder to keep peace, right? If I know how to grow some plants to make some food, I may be able to keep peace going. But if I have to kill everything I get, animals, maybe other humans, it's harder to achieve peace in that environment. So the tree of life is symbolic of a recreation that allowed us to have the environment to be able to practice our spirituality. But because that's not really explained, the problem then comes in is that when the modern systems pick up, because at least with Kabbalah, the mathematics is there. If you're really astute and you really want to study, you can see this, right? And younger systems besides that, they don't even explain that at all. So for instance, when an average person says, if you ask the average person, why you study spirituality? Yeah, you get enlightenment, right? You get understanding of the universe. You even get some people say, I want to learn how to ascend. Again, nothing really wrong with learning how to ascend, right? I'm not going to say that's wrong per se at all. But the problem that comes in with that is that, in a sense, we then forget that before certain wise scientists, and you could call them yogis, you could call them shamans, before they then learn how to ascend, right? Ascension, as what's being described, was not the first way of doing it. So the first time, like if you go to like when you start to study the spirituality of the pygmies, the spirituality of some of the older tribes, right? Not the modern spiritual systems, but some of the older tribes, when people will look at them and say, oh wow, they don't really have a depiction of afterlife the way modern spiritual systems do. Why? Because in the older days, ascension wasn't really what you were looking for. You eventually, if you died, you became one with the land, right? You literally became one with the land. So when modern man started to dig up some bodies, sometimes the land reacted a certain way because those bodies were almost like part of the land now. Like the body of, let's say, a shaman or yogi that was transformed would actually help the land. When that person died, it would actually help heal the land or energize the land, right? So at first, that was the way to do it. Then some people discover, some of the higher scientists discovered as we start to go more and more, okay, we can maybe take the body and project it out after death, right? So then that's the term ascension that the modern systems talk about. But even before that, you even had some individuals, right, who were able to, and now this will sound like science fiction, some individuals, they say, were able to not even become one with the land, maybe become one with the atoms, become with the microbes. The atoms and microbes are the physical world, but they're the physical world that you can't see. So they're actually in between the physical and the spiritual. So when they became one with that, they were still in the physical, but they were now in a new state. You kind of see that now with futurists, where futurists say, because futurists are so material, they don't look at it as ascending. They would say stuff like, well, if you die, you can transfer the brain into a machine. That's actually a more primitive version of what some ancients were able to master, where they were able to become one with the atoms or one with the microbes, right? Or even become one with eukaryotic cells, which is a more complex cell. So literally they become one with a living body, right? So sometimes you have living bodies that, when people died, those energies attach themselves to their cellular structure, and then they almost like can continue living in the body of the individual, right? So all those things, or all those types of death, right? Being able to prep for it was predate the ascension as we know. So when they predate the ascension concept as we know, and I'm not saying the ascension concept is the weakest. I'm not even saying it's not the superior concept. Like, obviously to be able to transcend and go to higher states is better. But here's the difference. If the modern spiritual systems were able to say that at first, right? If they were able to say it, then they would have more spiritual practitioners would have more of a appreciation for Mother Nature. The reason why they don't have appreciation for Mother Nature or even the physical world is because they just are focused on abstract concepts, and they don't understand how people before them did it. That's the difference. So then that's even why when you look at it, if you just look at it, keep it 100, right? That's not an ATR video, African traditional religion, but that's my foundation. So I always got to go back to it, right? That's why if you look at my Lantian video, when I said, well, the Lantians, whether you think that existed or not, right? Because I don't like to get into concepts that are usually hijacked by more modern spiritual practitioners who try to do a fast food version. So like, when you talk about the concept of Atlantis, it tends to be hijacked by the New Age community. So I tend to try to stay away from that, anything that they hijack. But if you look at it, even if Atlantis existed, right? Even if Lemuria existed, it probably coexisted with the regions of Africa, right? Meaning not that they were in Africa, but meaning intelligences. I'm not even saying human, right? The human, maybe before it, of the continent of Africa, were around the same time those regions were. And guess what? Africa still exists. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means in the sense that if you look at a lot of African spirituality, the concept of ascension, the way the younger systems do it, it's not really spoken about as much. So then, and those practitioners would have more of a relation to the land that they come from, right? The lakes, the rivers, right? And they'll be able to see that the universe itself is alive, where the younger sisters may not. So the younger sisters may might more focus on the superiority of humans. You know, we got hands, we got intelligence, we could speak, and all those things don't help you interface with nature. So sometimes you could live in the city so long, you forget that nature is about the predator and the prey. And you're in the food chain too. You just in the food chain just like any animal planet is. But we forget that because we live in cities now. We forget that because we no longer have to hunt. And because of that, even our spiritual systems have that flaw. And when our spiritual systems have that flaw, that's why now it's almost like science and spirituality almost even though spirituality came way before science, because our spiritual systems haven't evolved. So it sounds deep if I said, oh, before ascension, people used to either live with the land, become one with the land at death. Some people learn to shrink and I'm not talking about their bodies, physical bodies. I'm just talking about being able to merge with smaller particles, atoms, microbes, particles that you may not be able to see with your physical eyes, right? Some were able to merge energetically with bodies, right? So it's like with physical bodies. So you have one person who's like in a relay, right? And they pass the baton to the next person. And when they pass the baton, there could be thousands of people on that baton that it's like an energetic surge that goes from one body to the next body. Or when that person reproduces into their children. So they live on through that way. And then eventually, as the science got more evolved, they learned to ascend. So ascending could be the superior science. But if you don't know the ways of the past before that, you then have a very limited perspective of spirituality in the spiritual world, because then what ends up happening is, especially when you do the human construct, they then tend to get locked into a certain point in time. Right? So I said Atlantis, Lemuria. I mean, we say that's myths. So most people go way after that. So then you'll be talking about probably Kemet, Egypt, Sumeria, India, China. And then some people can't even handle that. So then they go Greece and Rome. Some people can't handle that. Then they go to, civilization became great when not the Romans, I already said that, but the British or the French did it. So it keeps getting younger and younger and younger. And and that's still representative of a weaker, not even a weaker system, but just a more limited system. Just a system that, becomes flawed in the ability to understand Mother Nature. And that's why when I say, the human construct is 100,000 years old, the earth is 4.4 billion years old, the universe is 14.4 billion years old, that has astral ramifications. That has ramification in the spiritual world. Because then that means, usually in the spiritual world, the human mind is starting from that 100,000 year point. And we don't realize that. So then because we start from the 100,000 year point, we kind of quarantine from the universe, right? So when you deal with the cosmos, we need the planet to survive. All that talk, we talk about how great we are. We don't have no planets. We don't have no sunlight. We won't be able to have the necessary time to ascend. Because when you look at Taoism, when you look at tantric yoga, one of the first things they say is the body is just as important as spirit, because you need time to be able to merge them in this point where your mind could then project at death, right? So if you say the spirit doesn't matter. So the younger systems say, all you gotta do is believe in something and you have a good afterlife. The older system would say that's not necessarily true. So when you're looking at that, the main problem that spiritual systems have when they're being presented is that if your system is not only integrated into nature, but if your system doesn't understand why it's supposed to be integrated into nature, the fact that the system itself has to understand that it's probably pre-packaged. It's almost like saying Mother Nature is so real, people can't handle the truth. Why you think in ancient times you had a shaman? The shamans were able to handle the truth. And the tribe did it. The tribe would just go to the shaman for simple questions. Like the tribe would think, the shaman can help me with dead. Shaman knows, man, there's states in nature way beyond death. Death is actually a young concept. Honestly, death as we know it probably came about with sex, right? So you're talking about red algae. We're talking about complex organisms, right? Complex cells, right? So even if I don't say red algae, if I just talk about complex cells, you're talking about death as we know it probably started as a construct. The way it's presented today, about 450 million years ago, sounds like a lot, but the Earth is 4.4 billion years old. So for like 2-3 billion years, that wasn't even a concept. That's the difference. For 2-3 billion years, that wasn't even a concept. The death, as you talk about, is something that's related to the weak nuclear force in physics, a force that causes transformations, right? So when you understand that, you understand that spiritual systems naturally are starting from a much younger point. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if they don't know that, here's the real problem. If they don't know that, if they're arrogant enough to really think that, when you start dealing with spirituality that's centered in any culture, any base human culture that basically is probably at best 5,000 years old, most cultures not even close to that, your spiritual system's gonna be lacking. Your spiritual system will probably lead you in a point of a tower situation. That's the reason why science can start to kind of theorize that there's probably 10 to 11 dimensions, and you got some spiritual systems talking about 7 dimensions. Sounds like a tower to me. It's kind of interesting that in the tarot, the tower card is 16. In numerology, 16 is really 7. Because, why do you think that is? Because most people lead you on the power of 7. So it's like a stopping point that some people don't even know there's a stopping point. They don't realize it's realms far beyond that. And that because they have a much shorter point of reference when they started. You're lucky if they start with a regular human construct 100,000 years ago. Even when you say 100,000 years ago, that's still probably a shamanistic system that's still integrated into nature. Most systems not even coming close to that. I mean, you see, with some systems talk about, if you follow the Bible, the planet 6,000 years old. You got other systems who brag about, mankind didn't come from primates. Mankind didn't come from apes because they didn't say in the walls. Like, man, if you just study some science, you realize, obviously we didn't. The mistake most people have is, us and traditional primates have a common ancestor. So yeah, we came from something primate-ish, no question. And humans are primates. But both points of view. So the systems that would say, we never depicted apes on the walls, they will look down on the Christian or the Muslims that say the earth started 6,000 years old. Well, guess what? They're both wrong. Honestly, they're both flawed. But that's what happens when you coming from a shorter point of view. And the reason why you do that is because it doesn't fit the narrative that your ego wants. Any spiritual system is supposed to not say the ego's bad, it's supposed to make the ego healthy. When the ego's healthy, the ego says, I'm in the physical world. I could understand the spiritual world by being able to understand the physical world, because the physical world is a copy of the spiritual. So something that simple sounds deep, and it's not supposed to. So this is Siris King. Hope that helps. We all students in the journey, but we all have to understand that it's a journey, and we have to be able to try to incorporate as many different examples as we can. So till next time, peace.